A big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. So in this week's video, I'm going to go through how we got down from 4,838 photos to this winning image in World Landscape Photographer.
You're like a ghost in my mind, I can't escape you.
So this is it, this is the winning photo from Neil. What an amazing shot. But before we get onto that, what I want to do is go through how we chose that photo, how we got down to this photo. Before I do that, we raised £10,000 for UNICEF, and that is absolutely amazing. They sent a message to me, the people that are going to be using that money, to say how it's going to be used. I'll link the video bit down below so you can see that, because I think that would be really useful. But it's fantastic that we could get together as a photography community around the world and raise that amount of money. So thanks ever so much for everyone that entered. It really made a difference, and hopefully it was a bit of fun too. So how did we go from the 4,838 entries, because that's how many we had, down to the 168 shortlisted, down to the 50 commended, and then finally to this shot of Neil's as the winner? I'm sure everybody's interested in that. Certainly when I look at competitions, I always am intrigued at how they choose that winning image. Sometimes I agree with them, sometimes I don't, and I'm sure there's going to be people that agree and don't agree with what we've chosen here. But I don't think many people will disagree that these images are amazing, absolutely amazing. So let me explain how we did it. Okay, so I'm going to go through it from the start. So we, first of all, announced the competition. Obviously, people submitted their images, and there was a certain way that they had to submit their images. Everybody could enter 5 images into the competition. So all those images went into a folder on Google Drive. I didn't look at those images as they were coming in. I just wanted to make sure that my first look at those images was when we all looked at them as judges. So those images were coming in onto our Google Drive. And what was really interesting is we had images from, I think, 58 different countries. So it really was a worldwide competition. Now, obviously, there was more images from the UK and the United States, but we had images from all continents. It was really well received. As you'd probably imagine, the split of countries was quite similar to my YouTube channel and my profile on there, which is probably similar to most photographers' viewing audience, I suspect, from the UK and the US. And the other thing that I thought was interesting, and I looked at these analytics afterwards on the competition, was that we only had 148 women. We had 900 and I think it was 2 men and 148 women enter. So I don't know why that is, but that's something that we need to change going forward. Certainly, if I look on Instagram, I probably got an equal amount of women and men that I like as photographers. So I don't understand why more women aren't entering the competition. But I'll go into that a little bit more detail later as well. Maybe it's a whole video on its own. So when we got all those images in, I developed a script. My software background helped a little bit, so I developed a script that took these images and then anonymized them. So it basically took the file name that they used, created an Excel spreadsheet with 2 columns, and then a unique name for each image, so that there was no way for the judges to know who entered that image, where they were from, what sex they were, anything. It was just totally anonymous. And those images were numbered 1 to 4,838. So then the task of actually judging them started. And the way that I thought was the fairest is if we split those images up. So we took 800 and odd images each. I think in the end, James got 838 because I did the divisions into 800 and then realised we had it 4,838.
Sorry, James, you got an extra 38. Oh. Emily, I can't cut the grass. I've got to judge more photos. It works quite well, actually.
So James got 838. The rest of us got 800 images. that then we had to whittle down to around about 30 images, but I wasn't too worried about that at the time, but they were our shortlisted images. And the reason that I didn't think it was a good idea for all of us to go through all 4,800 was because I felt that we wouldn't spend enough time. So for instance, I gave myself 15 seconds per image, which was around about a 3-hour process, and I did that in 3 days, so an hour each day, to look through those 800 images and then decide from those 800 images which images I felt were good enough to get to shortlist. And the criteria that I used for that were, and we all use as judges, were it had to be something that a little bit unique, it had to stand out, the composition had to be good, maybe some interesting lighting, but more important than anything, it just had that sort of wow factor. And I think that's interesting when you enter competitions, because I think there's 2 different types of images. There's probably a slow burner, and there's, you know, that gets better the more you look at it, and there's something that just goes, wow, that's good. And you know, I have to be honest, the ones that just jump out at you are probably the ones that are going to more likely get shortlisted. So we all came up with those 30 images from those 800 each in a batch, and then we had, I think, 168 images from that. So those were the 168 shortlisted images. An email went out to everybody and they had to send in their raw file. Now that email, the reason I knew those anonymous images and which email to send out is I got my son involved, who's helping me out at the moment. He's finished his exams. Well, he didn't do his exams because of COVID. So he's got some time on his hands. He's really, really happy to be working for me. And he went through and matched back those anonymous ones to, on the Excel spreadsheet, everybody's email, and then we could send out those email. Now, hands up, I did then start to know who some of the images were, because I had questions that came back to me from those shortlisted images. But I still didn't obviously share that with any of the judges, but there was probably 7 or 8 people that got back to me with questions, and then inevitably that meant that I saw who that image was from. But I don't think that had any negative impact on any of the judging process. So then we had all the raw files in a directory that we could look at when we went down to the last 50, because I wanted to make sure that they were sharp, and then the person that actually took that image was the owner of the image, and the raw file was a good way of showing that. So then we went on to stage 2, and that was these 168 shortlisted images. How did we then get those down to the 50 commended images? And that was that was a process that I wanted to be independently achieved from the judges. I didn't feel it was a good idea for us all to come together at that point, because we'd probably influence each other too much. So I decided it would be a good idea to just rank those 168 images from 1 to 5. 5 being, this is an amazing image, I'd like to see it get an award. 1 being, why is this in the shortlist? You know, and that allowed people that put an image in the shortlist to, you know, get that checked by other judges, I suppose. So it wasn't just their personal opinion of that particular image. And then we had a rank from the best one with the highest mark all the way down to the one with the lowest mark. And I basically just took the top 50, and they were the top 50 commended images. They all got over 20 marks out of a possible of 30 from 6 judges. So you can work out what you might have got, but you know that's how it worked out. And then what we did when we came together in the final stage on Zoom is that we made sure if there was anything in the shortlist that we felt should have been in, that we could bring that in to the shortlist. You know, if somebody had marked it a 5, but everyone else had marked it a 1, then we gave that one person a chance to say, just wait, why is this not in the top 50? What happened is no other images from that discussion came into the top 50. So the top 50 was just purely on that ranking, because we didn't feel that there was any justification to change that. So then it was a question of just having this Zoom call and then discussing the images and working out what we felt should win. So we went through the images and we decided, I think we got it down to about 12 or 15 images, and then we looked through those in a bit more detail and discussed them. And it was interesting that, because I think a lot of it came down to something a bit different, something that you think, oh, I've not seen that before, or yeah, that's amazing. And I think that's what competitions boil down to. You want an image that wins a competition to be something a bit unique, something a bit different, something that, you know, gets you here. It really ignites some emotion in you. And I think ultimately a good photograph is something where you have an emotional connection to. And certainly we felt that these top 7 images were ones that we had an emotional connection to. And I'll explain that now. So that's it. That's how we got down to it. And I'll go through the 7 images, and I'll explain why, you know, we felt they were really special. I wanted to also say that in those top 50, when I looked back through who they were and I was putting them on the website, I did notice there was only one woman that got in the top 50. So it worked out that out of the 13%, I think it was, of women that entered, only 2% got into that top commended awards. There's a separate conversation to say why are women not entering more competitions, or certainly this competition. I don't know what it's like in Landscape Photographer of the Year or International Photographer of the Year. It may be the same, it may not, but certainly in this one we had a very low turnout from women, and I really want to change that if we run it, when we run it next year. Okay, so let's have a look at the images, the winning images. Again, you've probably seen this image by now. This is the winning image by Neil, called Wise. It is, for me, something very, very special. As somebody who does take a lot more woodland now than I used to, I know how difficult it is to take a woodland photo when it's so chaotic. Now, obviously Neil's been helped out a little bit by the mist here, but there are so many elements in this that are just brilliant, and it's just seeing those elements which is so difficult. But if you take away from the fact of how difficult a photo it is to take, the most important thing is just how I started to see people in here. You know, take this character here, who looks like he's holding up a sword or something. These 2 characters that look like they're sort of intertwined, and you know, there's characters that you see in the background. It really ignites your emotions when you see this image, and printed big. It's 1.2 meters long here. It looks fantastic, really fantastic. It's definitely an image that looks good printed big, and when I was judging, my thoughts were, how are these images going to look like printed? Because I like to see my images printed. You know, as judges, you do have personal preferences on what you like or what you don't like. And for me, I always envisage what something looks like when it's printed quite big. And this looks absolutely amazing. You can read the comments of the other judges online, and you can see, you know, what they thought. But it was, yeah, this was far and away the winner for me. Now, it did come top of the 50 votes where everyone voted 1 to 5, which you'd probably expect, but I didn't share those numbers with the other judges, so they only knew what the top 50 were. They didn't know what was top of the top 50, if you see what I mean. But it actually came top of them, and it came top when we discussed the images as well. Yeah, so on to the second place, and this was The Cops by Jason. This is a really interesting image. I sort of knew when I saw this image it was probably taken with an infrared, either infrared film or an infrared converted camera. It was an infrared converted camera, actually, a Fuji X-T1, which I think works super well in this. If you ever tried infrared photography, it's actually quite difficult, but you start to get into tune with what works and what doesn't. But it's just the composition for me and the way that the lighting interacts with the trees, which is so good. You know, at the top we've got this light patch which almost feels like the trees have sort of dropped out of it. We've got the way that the light is just beautifully sort of illuminating the grass in the foreground. I'm not sure whether it's frosty or not. I'm just thinking about that now as I look at it again. It is such a stunning infrared black and white image. Absolutely love that. And yeah, it was a clear-cut second place. And then in third place, and these top 3 images were, you know, any one of them in any competition could have come first. And I would say as well, any different judges might have chosen a different image to win. That's what you've got to realise with a competition, that the same image is not always going to win. It's based on people's opinions, and photography is an art, and it is basically very opinionated. This one, this third place image called Special by Andrew, it was a really amazing image. I mean, it just looks so simple, doesn't it? You think, oh, well, I could take that. It's just a bit of ice with a leaf on it. But you try taking a shot that looks so good as this. It is so difficult to do. And I didn't know at the time whether he placed that leaf there, or I'd originally thought it was frozen into there, but then we spoke about his judges and we said, well, he's probably placed it there. But we then decided that didn't matter. And then when I saw his notes, that I realised it was frozen in place. So I don't know whether that makes it better or not, but yeah, beautiful image. The colours are beautiful, the shapes are beautiful, everything just works well. The way that, you know, he's actually composed it is just incredible. Fourth place went to Todd with this image called Fleeting Daydream. I had an idea this was probably in Yosemite. It was, and this is a good example of something that you have to wait a long time to get that. So, you know, so he's taken this waterfall, rather than just going and taking the waterfall, he's waited for the light to just be perfect. It almost looks like, you know, when you get petrol on top of water and you get those rainbow colours because of refraction of light through it, it almost looks a little bit like that. It's a little bit close to home here. I did a PhD on light and how light interacts and create different colours. So this is quite interesting to me. I used to do lots of experiments with thin films and all sorts to make these types of colours. So yeah, this is a place in my heart. But I like it. It's almost like an abstract image, which I thought was brilliant. And yeah, we loved it. It just jumped out of the page as a winning image. Fifth place was a shot that is often entered into competitions. You've probably seen this before. You know, usually people get a little bit closer up on the elements here. And we talked about this as judges a little bit and said maybe it should have been closer. But then we thought actually that this distant view was something quite special. You know, it just looks amazing. When you looked at the raw image and got closer in, you saw all the detail. This image printed big would look absolutely amazing. It is such a beautiful, beautiful image, and it's sort of once in a lifetime conditions. And what I think that Adrian did really well on was just getting the right exposure from those clouds. I think he mentioned in his comment that he'd spent quite a lot of time deciding on the exposure, and I think, yeah, that exposure length was perfect. Sixth place was this one from Radoslav. Radoslav did really well in the composition. If you look in the commended section, I think 3 or 4 of his images got in there, which was amazing. This is an image that's got that wow factor. It's a competition winner, isn't it? You know, you see that and it just jumps out of the page. I absolutely love it. There's so many elements which are really great. The layers are good. He's used a long lens to brilliant effect, but it's the light that makes this image. Just getting that light right and then not trying to overcomplicate it. It's gone quite close in on the scene rather than show the bigger scene, which is so beautiful. And then 7th place, and there's been a lot of comments about this image, actually. I've seen more comments about this image than any others. And this is an image that we thought looked like a Monet. It is so spectacular. The colours in this and that leading line is so amazing. It's so brilliant. I loved it, and it had to be in the top 7. So those images were amazing. We love them so much. I am so thankful of everybody for entering this competition, and I hope that's been useful. I hope you've enjoyed seeing the images, not just these top 7 but the commended images as well. I've had a lot of people ask about what we're going to do next year. We're definitely going to run the competition next year without a shadow of a doubt, and then we'll choose a charity probably that's more related to, unless there's another world pending disaster, hopefully there won't be. We're going to choose a charity that's related to the environment, and something that as landscape photographers we care really passionately about. So we'll definitely run it next year. I want to say a massive thanks to Squarespace, because Squarespace made it possible for me to put this competition on and make it really efficient. They sponsored this video as well, so thanks a lot Squarespace for sponsoring that video. if you're looking for a website, if you're looking for setting up certainly an online shop, then I can't recommend Squarespace enough. They make my life so easy that I used it for this World Landscape Photographer competition. It allowed me to set this up really quickly. I use it for my main site to sell my book on, and my calendar and my prints, and I also use it for my workshops as well. And it just means it's easy to do. I don't have to worry about any technology. Being from software development, I know a lot about technology, but I just don't worry about it. I just drag, drop the images, and Squarespace takes care of it all. So if you're looking for a website, make sure you go to squarespace.com. And if you're going to go forward with it and build one, you can get 10% off with the offer code Nigel. Okay, thanks ever so much for watching. And until next Sunday, when I have got an amazing video in the fog, trying to do a Neil Burnell, in fact. Don't get anywhere near, but inspired by Neil's beautiful fog-lit woodland image, I go in search of my own, and I get really lucky. Bye.